there's no intellectualizing of it to say, well, yes, I mean, X is also an addiction. It doesn't matter. The only things that matter are the things that once they're said, a shiver goes through the human being. Not that it should, but if it does, then that something has been impactful for a person, and I don't care if it's impactful. But if it is, it matters for the person. But as soon as you intellectualize it and say, well, it didn't send a shiver down my spine, but let's just talk about it, it's just a waste of time.
Will that thought process help me?
Nothing helps anything. It is not about help. It is not about good for you. It is not about anything like that. There's no recommendations. There is no, you should do it because it's good for you and it's healthy. All that is nonsense. Healthiness is nonsense. Good for you is nonsense. Human beings don't function that way. If it was good for you, then nobody would ever smoke a cigarette, and no one would ever put any intoxicating substances inside them. And it's not, no human beings are not wired to respond to what is good for you. That just creates empty chit chat in self-help chat rooms. It's nonsense. It's not true. So there's no can you. You can do whatever you want. So there's no, I will say, okay, that's allowed, but that's not. It's not about that. This is between you and you.
Is there any action that isn't a chase for pleasure or happiness?
No. To abstain from something is a forced abstinence. You should never abstain from anything. That's back to the self-help garbage. That's not real. Okay. Because it isn't natural. You're forcing yourself to. Why? Because it's good for you. Because you shouldn't do it. Because it's bad. Why would you abstain from it? Do you abstain from running in front of a car? Do you abstain from that? Do you abstain from jumping into a fast-flowing river? Do you abstain from that? Do you abstain from taking a knife and jamming it into your elbow? Do you abstain from that? It's all, everything has to be, every single element of self-help must be purged like a poison from one's being if they seek the truth. Well, it isn't for me to define what addiction is. There's no rules. Do electronics have utility? Absolutely they do. I think once again, one has to be mature and one has to be an independent human. And they have to examine these questions for themselves to see, is it really something that is interfering with life? Is it really something that they are using in a purely utilitarian fashion? Not that that's okay or not okay. Is it really something that is that they are honestly examining and see how it is massively damaging them or not? I think it's returning that question back to yourself. Why do you want to reach a wider audience without technology?
To be connected at all times.
Then be connected at all times.
And isn't that addiction?
Do you not see what's going on here? Do you not see how you use the addiction as the devil? And you basically said, your question isn't a question. Your question is basically, listen, I want to reach a higher audience, therefore I have to use technology. And the answer to that is, okay. When a truth is stated to one particular human being, the truth will do something to him. It'll penetrate into his heart of hearts. And to another human being, it'll bounce off like an arrow off of steel. And neither of those is proper or good. But if something penetrates someone, if it enters their heart, if it speaks to them, then there's an alchemy that takes place. If it doesn't, then intellectual questioning arises and gamesmanship arises. Is it okay if I use it for this? And is it okay if I use it for that? But what if I only use it on Wednesdays? And is it okay if all those things are just nonsense? And the reason that human beings go there is because they have been cradled in the womb of dishonesty their entire lives by the self-help and society and the world. The world is an enabler. It creates mediocrity. It creates conditioned semi-humans. And the semi-human will then bring that semi-ness. He will bring that conditioning into my domain. And that doesn't have any currency here. That doesn't work here. And this is going to be the only place that you ever find in which it doesn't work. Because in all parts of society and the world, that will work. That's what is not only expected, it's recommended. No, truth is beyond opinion, belief, or perspective. In all honesty, I think that electronics are actually more useful than books, because an electronic you can use as a GPS, an electronic you can use as, something that has a definite utilitarian value. Almost all books are just full of prescriptions and concepts and nonsense.
Based on the title, I'm asking.
Yeah, right. So when you say, are you saying, it is basically stating, in the vernacular, it is basically stating that, am I taking a stance that I need to convince you of? The talk that I gave was about electronic addiction and the downfall of man, how it has completely changed human existence. Humans now view electronics as their new home, and there was nothing there about you should or you shouldn't. But if something about that resonated with you on a personal level, then it did. But it had nothing to do with, am I saying this, and therefore you should, buy into that.
Electronics were causing the downfall of men, if that's what you were saying.
Yes. Yes.
It sounds like you covered it. Okay.
Yes, it is. It is. It's the new tobacco.
Interesting. Was there anything that you were pointing to directly that, if you could sum it up?
No, it's just electronics in general.
Okay.
Hi. To a certain extent, I understand the destructive nature of electronics, but here I am. Is that understanding sufficient for this addiction to burn itself out? Thanks.
I guess it depends upon how deeply the message resonates. And that goes for anything. When a truth is stated, it depends how deeply it reaches the bloodstream. And the deeper that it reaches the bloodstream, then that becomes something which takes one over, so to speak. And as long as something becomes a doing or an activity or something that you're trying to make it happen, it doesn't work. But it's all about the resonance. So I think it's along the lines of what you're saying. Well, to answer the question, is it a cycle that will simply continue? I think that the most effective way to answer that question is to look back at the last 5 years and see if it's a cycle that has continued, and that'll give you the answer. Your past will determine your future. Electronics addiction obviously isn't the only addiction, so absolutely. I mean, human beings who are, for instance, addicted to alcohol, it absolutely rips through their lives. So yes, it's not just electronics addiction. Electronics addiction seems to be, however, almost stealth in a way, because it is so a part of modern culture that it is viewed as such. One talks himself into the fact that it is fundamentally necessary, and they will sing its praises based upon all of its utilitarian values. And it does have utilitarian value, but it isn't, because it is so common, and because everyone has a third appendage called a smartphone now, that it's never looked upon as an addiction in the same way that perhaps alcoholism might be. One's DNA determines his susceptibility to addictions. It's not a natural unfolding. It absolutely is a downfall. The only question that remains is if him or herself considers it to be a downfall for them. I think it's already happening. I don't think one needs to look into society. One can just look at himself. I mean, what are the ramifications of that? As long as you need me to tell you the ramifications, the less possible it will be for you to truly come upon them and realize the damage yourself. Would you not say, in all honesty, that you're asking for a justification of electronics?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand how it's inevitable that electronic addiction would cause the downfall of man.
And I don't think that there's any way that I can answer that question if you don't see it yourself. Because then it turns into a discussion, and then it turns into a debate, and then it turns into, do you not see this? And you will say no, and I'll say, what about this and this? And you'll say, well, yeah, but this and this. Those things don't go anywhere. That's why something is either instantly realized or it is not. If you do not think that it has caused downfall in your life, then it is. You don't even need to stay in this room. It's not even worth mentioning. If someone is creating art, through the vehicle of software engineering, there's no judgment about that. I mean, if that's one's talent, then absolutely, why would they not pursue it? As for the postural health, that's absolutely correct. I mean, I think there's going to be I think there already is an absolute epidemic of the ramifications of the ramifications of not just bad posture, but the ongoing ramifications of bad posture. And bad posture itself sounds so cosmetic, but there is a litany and there's an earthquake worth of repercussions inside the human body for sitting with one's neck forward and shoulders hunched forward, and all of it. This absolutely creates a deep and physiologic effect upon human beings, and electronics are almost solely the cause of that. That is simply one example, and that's a obvious bodily physical example. But one could even say, well, I can do posture exercises to overcome or to neutralize that, and that could be true. But so that isn't the greatest cancer, though, from electronics. The greatest cancer is that you simply don't have a life anymore. This has become, the digital screen has become the epicenter of your existence. Even if it didn't cause human extinction, it causes human zombification. So, if someone is on a ventilator, are they really alive? So it doesn't really matter. It's the same thing, right? It's irrelevant. If someone lives a plastic existence, it doesn't matter if they're dead or alive. They're already dead. They may be biologically alive. They may have a heartbeat, and they may be alive in a clinical sense, but they're not really living. Nothing you can do. It is what it is. There's no good, bad, no right, no wrong, no judgment. No, you shouldn't do that. No, you should get an app which monitors your smartphone time. No, that's bad for you. No, make sure that when next time you do it, you make someone call you, tell you to get off. No, burn the self-help. Burn the self-help.
We're okay to die a death by 1,000 cuts, but we would abstain from sort of putting the knife directly into our heart. And I feel like, I'm still like processing this, and I'm wondering if this is the truth of it.
The truth is, if you do, then you do. And if you do less, then you do less. And if you do more, then you do more. And if you stop, then you stop. That is the truth. If you feel that you can be fulfilled, and if you feel that you are fulfilled, then that's the real question. It's not what I think, whether someone can be fulfilled or not. It isn't about the amount of information that a human being can process. It's about the creativity with which human beings waste their lives. So the incoming generations are doomed. And you don't need to take my word for it. You can just sit back and watch the evidence. As the years go by, human beings will become dumber and dumber. They will never know what a tree is. They won't know how to smell the air. They'll just become digitized humans. And they already have. And I think this is the most degraded generation that has ever hit the face of the earth. They know nothing unless they can use LOL. They can't even use a proper sentence. Everything is digitized. The music that they listen to is trash. The movies and the books they read, they don't read books. It is a completely degraded generation, and that all centers around electronics.
How you would just sit idly by as disaster approaches.
Well, disaster's already approached, and you've been sitting idly by.
Well, I guess I didn't really see it approaching. So now that I see it.
Right. And then you'll have to watch what you do or don't do. No. That's not from my definition to say, well, what is good music. I think the human beings who listen to trash know it's trash. But they don't, but it doesn't bother them. And it's not a good thing or a bad thing. If every other word is a curse word, it's a trash music, right? So, what am I going to say? Listen to music that doesn't have curse words? So come on, let's be honest. Be honest with yourself. And don't ever try to change yourself. If you listen to trash, you listen to trash. And there's no reason not to, if you wish to continue doing so. But don't be trying to be clever and say, well, what's trash? What's your definition of trash? As if you don't know that what you listen to is trash. Unless you have spoken to God himself. The only reason that you say that human beings are social animals is because that's what society has told you since you were born. That's a bumper sticker. How do you know that human beings are social animals? The only reason that you would say that in a verification sort of way is if you looked around and you look at human beings and they were all socializing. Yes, human beings are doing a lot of things, but what they are doing and what they naturally are two different things. Human beings do everything wrong. They are cosmetic creatures. They have lost their way. So to try to determine what a human being fundamentally is by looking at his behavior is not an adequate representation. And it is not the proper examination of evidence. So you have come in with a claim, a concept, which is not your own, which is not born of truth. You don't know that a human being is a social animal. Nothing can lift you up. I think it is an examination of your own propensities and the depth with which you examine and the clarity with which you realize will determine what happens, as opposed to you trying to use some kind of technique to lift yourself out of it. Those things don't work because it isn't real. It doesn't come from your bones. What must be realized is that everyone is like you.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is born with a Buddha as a father and Mira as a mother. Everyone is born under the tent and the umbrella of pathology.
Okay.
No one's raised by Zen masters. So it's just the degrees are different and the details are different. So no one is taught the perfect things and the proper wisdom, because when human beings become parents, they're very young and they're trying to figure themselves out. It takes a lot of years, and it takes a lot of years even if the person is dedicated to it. If they are not, which the vast majority are not, it never happens. So I think that's really the important thing to realize here. Essentially, electronics addiction is the downfall of man because the electronics have become the center of their existence. That's all they know. They only leave to go somewhere and they come back to the electronic. The electronic has become their center, their home. They know nothing else. Their life is an entirely digitized life, and it isn't good or bad. It is if that resonates with someone, then it does, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But the idea of should I use less or should I use more or should I do some prescription that will cause me to use less because it's good for me, those things don't go anywhere. It isn't about humans. It's about you. Everything is about the individual themselves. There's no collective anything. Groups are nonsense. They don't go anywhere. Anytime that you're in kind of a group discussion or anytime you're in a group meeting or anytime you're in a group therapy, it's not true. It's all false. All that's going to be said is false. The foundation is false. Nothing's going to happen. No one's going to get transformed. It's a game because human beings are egoistic creatures. They will simply posture in front of the other people. So that's all nonsense. As for one person in particular, it isn't that they should do this or they should do that. If they feel that electronics addiction has caused a detrimental effect to their life, and if that feeling is sincere and genuine, that itself will create its own actions. There's no recommendations that one should use less electronics and that all people should get together and make it a pact and all that nonsense. No, it is very personal. Everything is personal. There are no others. There are no people. There are no masses. There is just you. There's no balance. It is all about examining your own situation. If you feel that what you're doing is not detrimental to your life or to your existence, then there is absolutely no reason to change. If you feel that what you are doing is purely utilitarian, if you feel that what you're doing is simply an expression of your art through the vehicle of electronics, then it would not be wise to leave that because that's your art. That's what's in your heart. So absolutely it would be wise to pursue that. If you feel that is polluted, however, and that you are using that as an excuse by going on electronics for nonsensical purposes that are cosmetic and don't take you anywhere and take time away from your life to experience life itself, and if that resonates with you, then you will do something about that. If you don't feel that, then you won't. It is all about honesty. It is not about prescriptions. It is not about methods. It isn't about techniques. It isn't about healthiness. It isn't about properness. It isn't about correctness. There is no right. There is no wrong. There is no good. There is no bad. That is beneficial for all humans. My answer is okay. Whatever you think. And by the way, as for the knowledge that you think is democratizing, most of the knowledge that you call knowledge on social media is trash. It is not real. It is not true. If you Google something, for instance, how to find peace. If you Google, for instance, what is the way to world-class performance, right? And you get, 17 million search results. They're all going to be untrue. They're all going to be. If you Google, for instance, how to not have any limits, and you'll get diet and exercise. Okay, so go try that. And see if the democratization of knowledge. What you mean by knowledge? I mean, everything out there is just junk. There's no truth seekers out there. Everything is all prescriptive and do this and do that and 5 methods and 5-step plans. It isn't even worthy of being stated under Google. Google's a great company. It lessens Google to have search results of trash. It's all nonsense. And if it was true, you will see that if you type in how to find peace, that's been typed in 1 billion times. And it is being typed in all the time. So if the 17 million search results actually worked, then why would humans still be typing that in? Everyone's still searching because nothing works. There's really no prerequisites for things. If you take a particular food and that food causes you to vomit and you're not really sure if it was that food or what exactly it was, it might have been some other food. But in order to do the test, you take that same food again and it makes you vomit again. You will never touch that food again. And you won't have to achieve mental clarity to do so. So there's no prerequisite for anything. There's no high-seated, fancy, otherworldly thing that you have to see or to have to accomplish before you see obvious things. So if you look into your life and you find that electronics have not taken over your life, Or even if you find that they have, but it doesn't bother you, so be it. There's no judgment. There's no good or bad, but you don't have to have any prerequisite of mental clarity. You simply have to have the desire to actually look if you feel like looking, and even looking isn't recommended.
If you've come to the conclusion that
I don't think it's a conclusion. That's a dangerous word. I don't come to conclusions. It really is about observations, and it is personal observations. It is not for me to come to the conclusion and say, electronics addiction is the downfall of man. That absolutely is true. But it is not true for me to impose that upon you and say it has caused your downfall too. By the way, even though it may have. So it isn't about you latching onto my conclusion, for instance, saying you've concluded X, and since you have concluded X, it isn't about me. It is, did that resonate with you? Not that it should. And if it did, then it goes somewhere. There's no how. How do you get away from a snake in your kitchen? How do you get away from a poison on your shelf? The only reason that you need a how to get away from something is if you are not convinced that that something is causing you great harm. If you truly recognize that it's causing you great harm, you don't need a how. That's just self-help culture crap. It's all nonsense. I am telling you, the single most effective thing one can do, only if it resonates, is to go to their backyard and have a bonfire and throw every self-help and spiritual book in it.
My craft for me may be leading to imprisoning others.
Well, it doesn't really
How does
matter.
one reconcile this?
It doesn't really matter, because it's not good or bad. Because if it really troubles you to that degree, that what you consider your art and it is imprisoning others, then you'll automatically leave it. You know, to judge your life by others. Now, obviously, yeah. If you're spiking medicine with poison, you know, it's killing people. I understand. Okay, that's obvious. But you know, human beings are going to find a way to poison themselves, to be honest with you, in various ways. So I think the conscious capitalism stuff and the kumbaya stuff, and that doesn't go anywhere. That's not real.
Sure.
That's all just to, you know, adorn one's own self-image of being a conscious capitalist person, and I'm just good, and you know, I wear a white robe, and it's all holier than thou nonsense. A human being must be true to themselves, because then they will lessen their own self-conflict. And if you are true to yourself, if you are honest with yourself, you tend to have a more easy life. You can't set an example because you are addicted yourself. It's not a bad thing. No judgment. It is what it is. So you can't set. And if you try to set one, it'll be false. It'll be fake. It'll be artificial. You know, that's another poison from the self-help movement. Set a good example. Say the right thing. It's all nonsense. The greatest way to be an example is to be it. But you can't behavior your way into it. It is far more honest and far more dignified to say that I'm not that than it is to pretend that one is. It's all self-help poison into the bloodstream of human beings. Well, there's no balance that I can prescribe. It's one must approach that for themselves.
It's personal.
Absolutely. There's no self-help. There's no you should do this, and you know, 2.73 hours is good, and the research has shown that 2.75 hours is bad. No. Why are you afraid of the word addiction? Morality is just a societally created empty concept. There's no morality. There's no go about. It is, you know, the things that I write about, they sometimes, for a given human being, produce a sort of storm, and they sometimes a given human being may begin to examine all that he or she thinks they know and come to realize they don't really know anything at all, that they are simply a repository which has been filled by society and the world of empty nonsense. So there's no do this first and then do that next and then do that next. Morality is a complete farce, because if a human being was at peace, he wouldn't need morality. He would never hurt anybody without any, he wouldn't need a concept not to hurt someone. He wouldn't say, I'm not going to hurt X, Y, and Z because it's immoral to do so. He wouldn't have the compulsion to do so. Where did you find the word psychopath? It's a concept given to you by society. Exactly, a dictionary written by human beings. All these are all made up words. What do you mean by psychopath? Human beings all have psychopathic tendencies. All these definitions are garbage. It isn't about changing people. It is completely, entirely personal in one's own life. It's not about societal change.
Yeah. Is the world becoming more feminine?
Hello. I was just seeing your tweet recently with what self-help and spirituality truly is. I may have missed that, but I would love for you to give us a bit of a definition to elaborate on that and how it relates to electronics addiction and the downfall of man.
Well, those are two different concepts. Those are two different talks.
What are your thoughts on quantum spirituality?
I've recently given up drinking, and I had 4 years. I had 10 years sober when I was younger. Then I went out for 4 years, and I have 4 months now. And I've noticed that I'm starting to use the phone a lot. And this isn't something that it's not really. I haven't really done it, but I see I'm kind of switching addictions, how they say, and I'm very aware of it. And I'll wrap this up real quick. And it definitely feels unnatural. The environment that I live in is out. I live in a very close commune with nature, so I've got this contrast of like the natural world, and then going inside, like being on the phone. It's just strange, and I just want to know if everybody's more or less addicted to their phone. Like whenever you break addictions, you remove yourself from society. Like if I don't eat sugar, if I don't drink, if I don't smoke, and now I'm not going to use my phone, well, I'm going to be this like lone weirdo. So maybe could you offer I don't know, some advice?
Well, you're talking to someone who believes that society is complete garbage. So breaking away from society is actually in the direction of truth. But you don't need to imbibe that. I don't think that these things distract people from society. It brings them into society.
Okay.
That's why they do it. So, but I'm not interested in turning anyone away from society. If someone is drawn to society and they like society and they want to socialize and they want to do what people are doing and they want to have groups and communities and all of that stuff, so be it. But that certainly isn't a way to get away from society. Human beings will do anything and everything to move towards other people, to socialize and to get together and to make themselves relevant. That's what all of social media is. That's what all the electronics is. Electronics are all attempts to connect with other people to talk about nonsense and empty things.
Right. So do you feel that the virtual reality space on blockchain is a good thing or a bad thing for humans?
I have no idea what that is. I don't know much about those things. I don't think it's about getting back on track anywhere. Everything must be generated from the human being. So long as one is following a prescription, so long as one is following something that the thread of which is created by someone and they're trying to follow along, then it wasn't generated by the human. Therefore, they're just a puppet. And therefore, they're going to ask questions of how to at every step of the way because it wasn't their doing to begin with. So it really is about realizing, if you feel that electronics addiction has significantly been a detriment to your life, and if you genuinely feel that it has, then you will have the necessary will and resources to move away from it. Not that you should. I don't think about countries. The only relevant things are the human being themselves. I think the greatest departure between how you and I view things is that you believe that getting closer to other people is valuable. You believe that connection is valuable. You believe that creating a communal atmosphere is valuable. I do not. I think getting closer to other human beings and creating connections with other human beings, and while there may be relevance in a purely business form, which is fine and utilitarian, but anything beyond that, I think is gravely detrimental. But no one should ever listen to me unless their experiences have taught them the same thing. And if they have not, they should totally disregard what I say, because it is going to be completely foreign to how they view things.
How do you free yourself from your mind?
You don't really consider that a serious question, do you? First of all, it's off topic, but secondly, you in your heart of hearts, do you really expect me to say, do 2 jumping jacks and meditate for 20 minutes? Do you really believe that? Is that really honestly a serious question? How do you free yourself from your mind? I mean, this can take 25 years of a systematic exposure to truth. And you want to come into a chat room and you want to ask me, how do you free yourself from your mind? I would imagine that you perhaps might have a little more sincerity than that. Yeah, man absolutely is a problem-creating machine. I think balance is an empty concept, because balance implies that there's a 50-50 and that'll lead to equilibrium, and it doesn't. Equilibrium usually is about 74.3, versus, do the math, whatever it is, 25.7. It's never 50-50. And you will drive yourself nuts fighting 50-50 because it's an artificial concept. It's just it is simply an intellectual idea. It really comes down to you not turning the don't use electronics into a rule to follow. There's no rule. There's no good or bad. If you are using something and it is providing you benefit and it is utilitarian and it is a part of what you do, then why would you not do it? It would make no sense not to do it. If you feel that that is the majority of the reason that you do it and the only reason that you do it, then there probably wouldn't be any consternation. If you at the same time, however, feel that even though you do it for utilitarian purposes, you also use it incessantly for cosmetic and time-wasting purposes, that isn't good or bad either. It is only a problem when you feel that it is a problem. But what I'd like to stress to you, based upon how you asked the question, is that there can be no rules. You cannot turn it into a rule of good and bad. It is completely, you are the rule creator and you are the rule destroyer. It is all through your eyes. It is what you say that goes. It is not self-help. That is not the king. You are the one in the high chair. So I think that must be what is really must be understood if one is serious, because what happens is that human beings are basically pawns. They weren't born as pawns, but they have become pawns at the hands of society. So they have put society and its holier-than-thou moral books and self-help principles as the king, and they are the slave, and they must live up to the principles that the king laid out. And that entire construct is false, and every human being is a victim of that. Self-help and spirituality are the greatest oligarchies, the greatest tyrants of modern society. Well, you're doomed, because the fact is that you do want to connect to other people, even though you intellectually realize the detriment of it. That intellectual realization is no match for your desire to connect. Everyone is seeking self-help and spirituality and principles and concepts and feel good and do better and be improved and all that. No one is seeking truth. Well, it is deeper, but the thing is, you're not going to access the deeper because it's too deep. So you must access through something that is in your experience. Otherwise, it's just a theory and a concept. Everything prevents someone from accessing the state of no mind.
Thank you.
Until they find the truth.
World where the benefits of technology and its truthful use can outpace the downfall of man.
Never. Because human beings will corrupt everything.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah.
So, as I've been working on going within in my own journey and trying to curb my own addictions to electronics and honestly society at large, I find that I continually have existential crises and they are ongoing. When does that end? Like, does that end?
When one discovers the truth. And the path to truth can only be discovered if when there is a life devotion to discovering the truth at the expense of all cosmetic ideas raised by society, such as spirituality and self-help, and the greatest evil of all, prescriptions. It doesn't really matter. If one is devoted to the truth, it's not about becoming attached to experiences. If you are, you are. If you're not, you're not. But if you're devoted, it won't really matter. A human being already has a chip. It's called the mind. It's already brought him down below what any chip can do.
Okay.
And that mind is precisely what becomes addicted to everything. Most of all prescriptions. Well, there's always something deeper. So it was, the electronics addiction will always be a symptom, but the human being is never going to get to the direct cause. So they have to go through tributaries. And the tributaries are the things that they actually know. Because the true cause, it is not in their experience. Therefore, they have to deal with that which they know. They have to deal with the familiar to follow back to the deeper things. I think psychology has nothing to do with reality. Well, it depends on which road you want to take. I mean, if you want to go straight to the mind, and then that's its own path. That's a path of devotion towards becoming free of the mind. But that is such and it requires such an extreme degree of devotion that there's only a handful of human beings in the world that probably have that kind of devotion. So really the more practical thing for the vast majority of human beings is to go by way of the things that the mind has produced, because that is something that they can access. The addiction that's right in front of their face is easy to see. So it all depends upon where one is. It all depends upon one's DNA, not genetic DNA, but how one is wired. It's not about the us, it's about the you. And there's no harnessing of anything. There's no reason to even look into it unless one is fully convinced that it's causing problems in their own life. And if it's not, and if the problems are not to the degree that they think need addressing, then there's no point in doing anything about anything. Yeah, with increasing generations, it's going to be even more difficult, because the level of distraction is so off the charts that a human being never actually has time to figure out what he wants, because he never spends time free of addictions and of distractions. Human beings are addicted to socialization. They're addicted to other people. They are addicted to posturing in front of other people. They're addicted to social media. They're addicted to their smartphones. And so human beings are so distracted on so many levels that the possibility of them even realizing what it is they want to do is such a completely part-time job. It doesn't even elevate to the level of part-time. So that level of distraction absolutely, ruins someone's life because they never come to forget, realize it, but even think about it, what they were put on this earth to do, what their level of talent is, what their natural gifts are. They're just distracted. Well, there's no when would one realize. I mean, there's no time, right? Either you realize it now or you don't. Not that you should. Do you think that looking at social media and looking at all these websites and self-help and spirituality and all of these things are going to make you realize things about yourself? So two things. Number one, it appears as if the net result of your use of electronics in your mind seems to be a net benefit. And if that's the case, so be it. Number two, the things that you are talking about helps me with improvement, improve myself, and helps me improve my performance. You are looking at things in a fantastically menial and meager way. You are living incredibly below your potential. The things that you are reading, the things that you are looking at, that you feel have made you become somewhat self-improved or improved your performance. There is light years beyond that. If what you have read is prescriptive, if what you have read relates to what you should do, what you should feel, how you should change your behavior, what habits you should have, what's a 5-step plan, methods, techniques, prescriptions, you have sabotaged yourself. And the things that you believe are self-improvement are sort of like a horse that crawls and doesn't realize that he can run. Now, having said all of that, that may not mean anything to you because it isn't in your experience. I am simply stating it as a matter of fact.
It's a phone. Phone is essentially like a mini computer. You can write on it. You can take pictures.
So you're asking for rules. You're asking for rules and permission.
No, I'm not.
Whatever you think is okay is okay.